Welcome back, my fellow witches and wizards. Today we are doing the wrap-up for the NEWTs Readathon 2019. I love getting to do the magical readathons. There are various ones throughout the year, and this one in particular is one that I've been looking forward to for about a year, because I found out about it last September when everybody else was doing their wrap-up videos, and now, after a year of waiting, I finally get to do my wrap-up video. So, a quick reminder, if you don't know what the NEWTs Magical Readathon was, every year there are the O.W.L.s Magical Readathon in April, and then in August there are the NEWTs Readathon, and that is taking whatever subject you had passed in O.W.L.s or like whatever career you had chosen, and then actually taking the exams for that career to see if you get to move on to training for that career. And the readathon is awesome. Like I said, I've been looking forward to it like a ton. So the career that I chose was librarian, and for that I had to sit for 3 exams, and I had to get a specific score on each exam. And the way that works is there's 3 scores that you can get on each exam. There is A, which I believe is acceptable, and O, which is outstanding, and E, which is exceeds expectations. And then you can get like 3 of those scores for each one. And then you have to, for each level, you have to read a book. So that's basically how you sit for the exam. And so, for instance, Ancient Ruins, I had to get an exceeds expectations, and in order to get that, I had to achieve all 3 levels. So I had to read 3 different books. Whereas with, what were the other ones? I've got my trusty journal here as always. For Defense Against the Dark Arts and History of Magic, oh, okay, I have them in the wrong order, apparently. So it's A first, and then E, and then O. Okay. I had them in the wrong order. Apparently I don't know what I'm talking about. But I will link, her original announcement video so you can watch that and know better what the rules were. Basically, for librarian, I had to get the O.W.L., or I keep wanting to say O.W.L.s. I had to get an O in Ancient Ruins, an E in Defense Against the Dark Arts, and an E in History of Magic. So that ended up being 7 books. I was going to try and get Spellslinger in there somewhere, because that was a book that everybody could use to replace one of the tests if they needed to, but I totally forgot about it until they did the live show for it, and by then it was too late. Like, there was no way I was going to get a hold of that book and finish reading it. But I did read all of the other 7 books, so I technically didn't even need to read Spellslinger. So I passed my NEWTs, and I can be a librarian! Yay! And next year I can try for a different career. So, for the 7 books that I read, let's go through those. So the first one that I read was The Thief, and this was for an A in Ancient Ruins, and that was to read a book that had been recommended to you by a friend. And this book was one that I received from my Secret Santa at Christmas time, and they said that they loved this series and that they hoped that I would love it as much too. Honestly, I had mixed feelings about this book. For the first half of the book, the main character, who I'm assuming these are his hands that you see here, the thief, he really, really annoyed me. Like, so much. I was so sick of his complaining. Admittedly, he had been through some hard stuff. He had been locked in prison for stealing the signet ring of the king, and so he had it pretty rough. He had been hungry, he was sick, he was really disgusting and covered in scabs and scars and bruises, and he complained a lot for at least the first half of the book, maybe the first 3/4 of the book. Once he stopped complaining, I actually enjoyed this book a lot more. One of the things that I did like about it was that interwoven with the story, she gives the myths of the gods that are in this world that she created for this world. And so that was really cool, because I love myths and legends, so I thought that was cool to hear them telling the stories of what the myths were for the gods in this world. I did really enjoy the world. I enjoyed learning about, like, there's 3 different countries that are in this world, and I enjoyed reading about them. I did enjoy the story behind the stone that he has here in the picture. This is part of a trilogy, I believe. There's for sure 2 books. I'm pretty sure there's 3 books. I have no plans of continuing this series. Like I said, I did enjoy it by the time I got to the end, but I'm not interested enough in it to continue on with the series. But I did really enjoy this book. And what I loved that at the end of the book, it has like a question and answer thing with the author. And so she gave some behind the scenes things. She talked about some of her favorite authors. And so I loved that too. I thought that was really cool. Overall, I would suggest like people read it. I think it really is a cool book. The character just really annoyed me. So if like you don't have so much of a problem with annoying characters, like definitely pick it up and read it, because I think it's a really good read. The next book that I read was The Cabinet of Wonders, and this was for E in Ancient Ruins, and this was to read a book that had been written in the past tense, which pretty much covered most books, but I chose this one. I think I found this book in a little free library. I can't remember exactly where I got it. And this is part of a trilogy, I believe. It says it's the Kronos Chronicles Book 1, and I know there's for sure a second book because they mention it in here. I don't know if there's more than that. But if there are, then I do plan on reading all of them. Because I don't see anywhere where it says how many there are. I loved this book. So this book takes place in, it's been like a month since I read this. I read this at the beginning of the month. It's in not the Czech Republic, because it's before, Prague's the city. Trying to think of the name of the country. I don't remember the name of the country, but the country that Prague is in. And from what I looked up, based on some of the terms that they used, because they called the country something very, very specific. Oh, what did they call the country? Bohemia. That's what it is. And I actually looked it up to see if if Bohemia was real. And Bohemia was the name of Czech during a very specific set of years. I think it was like a 10-year period or something like that. In like the early 1900s or like the late 1800s, something like that. And so this takes place in our world, but there is magic. And so I don't know if I guess that'd be considered magical realism, but I'm not entirely sure. And so the magic is really cool. Like, I love the magic system in this book so much. And I loved all of the items that they were able to have from this magic. Like, for instance, the magic tends to follow along in bloodlines. Like, if your dad has magic with glass, you're gonna have magic with glass, kind of a thing. And so, like, there's this one guy in the town that has magic with glass, and he's created this glass that you can speak your worries into, and then they'll go into the glass and darken the glass, and they'll leave you so you can sleep peacefully. And then there's like the main girl, her last name is Kronos, and her dad has magic with metal, and so he's able to like talk to the metal, I guess, and befriend the metal, and like make all these really cool metal things. Like all of these things down here where it's like the monkey and like, I forgot what that is, like an iguana or something, and the dogs and the birds and the spider, they all were like magical metal pets that he created. And the dogs actually grow from puppy size to adult size as they age. So there's all kinds of like really, really cool magical items that are in this book that they describe. And I loved just like the whole story of it. I loved the adventure that they go on. I loved the creativity of like how the girl solves the different problems. I loved this book. I enjoyed it from the beginning to the end. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I would suggest everybody read this book. I cannot wait to read the sequel. I think they have the sequel in the back, like, you know, an excerpt from it, and it's called The Celestial Globe is going to be the sequel. And so I am excited to get to read more books in the series, to get to see more of the magic and the world building, and I love the series and I cannot say enough about it. The next book that I read was Gulliver's Travels, and that was for my in Ancient Ruins. And I think that was to read a book that I've been wanting to read forever. A book that has been on TBR for ages. So this book, I have been wanting to read Gulliver's Travels since I was really, really little. I used to watch the cartoon for Gulliver's Travels when I was growing up, and I loved it, and I wanted to read the books so bad because I knew the cartoon only covered like 1 or 2 of the worlds that he visited, and I was pretty sure he visited 3 of the worlds. Turns out he visited like way more than 3 worlds. And so, well, not worlds, countries, because they're all on our planet, according to him. And so I was really like curious to get to read it and learn so much more. I hated this book. And I think the major reason for that was that I didn't realize what the book was actually about when I started reading it. I had certain expectations in my mind, and those were not necessarily in line with what the book really was. So I thought that the book was just going to be this like lighthearted adventure, seeing like all these different kinds of peoples, you know, the little 6-inch people and the huge giants and whatever other peoples there were. Like, I thought it was just going to be this fun, frolicking adventure. It is not just a fun, frolicking adventure. In fact, there's very little fun frolicking. So he does indeed visit those countries that we know about, you know, the little 6-inch Lilliputs, the huge giants. He also visits a country where the city floats on the clouds, and then like he ends up going back to the ground, and I forget what else happens there. Oh yeah, there's like a science academy there that he gets to learn about. And I think the very last world that he ends up visiting, the humans and the horses are switched. So the horses are the intelligent beings on the country, and the humans are called yahoos, and they are super dumb and super manipulative. And so, so he does visit all these different places like I was expecting. I was not expecting the book to be a political commentary or a political satire, and it heavily, heavily is a political satire. At the beginning, he does it, but the author does it by having the people that he's visiting pointing out all the flaws that are with the English government and the world government, and him being the good Englishman that he is, trying to defend England and say how great it is, and then just saying they don't understand because they're on this isolated place and they don't understand the complexities of international relations. And then by the very end of it, he is admitting how horrible the human relations of people are and how much he hates humans. And so I was not expecting that. I did love that part, though. I thought it was very well done. What I really, really did not like about it the most was I was not expecting how much the author, Jonathan Swift, hates women. He really, really hates women. He has a very, very low opinion of women based on what he put in this book. Basically, the female characters are the only characters that do anything bad. The only exception to it is the little girl that takes care of him when he's in the giant world. He seemed to like her. Other than that, like, sorry, my son is trying to get into the video. Okay, my son has joined us now, and he's over there. So, back to what I was saying. There's, like, every country he goes to, the women do something bad. So, in the first country, like, it's kind of mild compared to the other countries. One of the guys that are in charge accuses his wife of going and having a private session with Gulliver. By the way, she is 6 inches tall, and Gulliver is a full-grown man. So what they thought was going on between a 6-inch little woman and a full-grown man, I don't even want to begin to imagine. But it was a huge scandal, and they acted like pretty much what would happen if 2 people of normal sizes, a girl went, or a married woman went and visited him privately. When he gets to the giants, it only gets worse, because apparently all of the royal ladies love to strip him naked and strip themselves naked and put him on them. And he goes in depth of describing parts of a 16-year-old giantess that I did not need to know about. And the next world, he complains about the infidelity of the women and how they go from being completely cared for and having children and being in what would appear to be the perfect marriage, but instead running away to be on the ground because they cannot stand to be in the flying city, and being with a man who is abusive and poor and disgusting in every way that he could possibly describe. And he goes on to say that that just shows that the women in their country are the same as women all over the world, because that is his opinion on women. And even when he's in the world, or the country with the horses, I'm like, there are horses, nothing could go wrong. But I was wrong, because apparently the Yahoo girls, even at age 11, have drives that send them into the river to cling to him while he's bathing. So, he has a very low opinion of women. None of the men did anything bad in these stories. Just the women. Just the women. Needless to say, I am horrified by that book. The next book that I read was The Cryptid Catcher. And for this one, I read it for my A for Defense Against the Dark Arts. And that was to read a book that is black under the cover. And it is black under the cover. And it even has two eyes watching from out of the dark, because it's about catching the awesome creatures that have been in our stories. So, like Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, the Yeti, the Chupacabra, like all of those like random creatures. Apparently they're called cryptids, which I did not know. And so this story follows this boy here as he, like, it starts out his father has just died, and he's going to be ending up taking over the family business that he does not know is the family business. And so it follows his adventures as he's like learning the ropes, making new friends, trying to find these cryptids, specifically trying to find a cryptid that is immortal and has the blood that is like the life spring. And I loved it because this whole part was just hilarious and made me laugh. And it was autographed, which is another reason I picked it up. Wherever the autograph is, it should be on a black page because it's got awesome purple pen. So I loved this book. I cannot wait to read the sequel, The Cryptid Keeper, which just came out, I think, like a week or two ago. Totally gonna buy it. Totally gonna read it. Totally disappointed that this is only going to be a duology, because I could seriously read a whole series of this kid's adventures trying to find cryptids. It has fantastical elements. Obviously there's cryptids. It's fantastical. But, just like some like extreme stuff, this rich guy shows up and gives him a diamond card that he can use to spend on everything. I mean, come on. What kid did not have that dream that some rich guy was going to show up and give them a diamond card so that they could have unlimited funds to travel the world and search for awesome monsters? I'm not going to lie. I daydreamed about that when I was a kid. So this book was just fun. So much fun from the beginning to the end, even in the dangerous parts, because obviously trying to find cryptids is going to be dangerous, especially when you're searching for an immortal cryptid, and not just from the monsters that you're trying to find. There are other catchers as well that are trying to kill you. And it's so awesome and exciting, and I love this book. Go and read this book. Everybody go and read this book. It is so much fun. I don't know if this counts as like fantasy or magical realism or what, but it is awesome. And I loved this book, and I want you guys to all go and read this book. Okay. The next book is Dragon's Green, and this is the first book in the World Quake series. Again, I don't know how many books there are. I know there's for sure 2 books, and this was to get my E in Defense Against the Dark Arts, and that, what is that kid doing? And that was to read, let's see, Gilderoy's Memory Charm. Read the first book that you remember. So this was the first book that I thought of. And this usually is. Like, I've had that question come up a few times. So for some reason, this book was always the first book that I thought of. And so the cover is really beautiful. And as far as I could remember from what I imagined of the world in this book, the cover has nothing absolutely to do with what's going on in this world. So, this world, I forget what year it's supposed to take place, but I kind of imagined it just taking place like within a year of now. So very, very soon in the future, maybe even a little bit in the past. And basically what happened was the world was going along as it normally does, exactly the world as we have it now. And then there was a world quake. And that world quake shook the entire world for 7 minutes. And after those 7 minutes were over, all of the internet was gone. The electricity barely worked. The phone lines barely worked. Pretty much life as we know it, gone just like that. And so in the book, it says that it reverted the world basically to 1992. I would argue it put it further back than that, but that's like basically where they said it was going to be. The phone lines are so out of order that every once in a while they will shut down the phone lines for a whole week in order to allow the lines to rest. And there is kind of internet, I guess. It's like dial-up, and it's like their message boards, so it's definitely like the internet of the 90s. And most people don't use it because it's so hard to use. And so these 3 kids here go to a school that I don't remember what the actual name of it was, but it was like nicknamed that it was the school for like the troublemakers and the weird kids and stuff like that. And while like things when they first start, like you don't realize that there's magic in the world, and then you find out that there is magic in the world, but most of the people don't believe that it actually exists, and the people that do know it exists and have it are trying to hide it. And so the main girl, her grandfather dies, and she ends up having to try and get to Dragon's Green, which is why it's called Dragon's Green. And so a bunch of adventures ensue. There are, again, some really cool magical items in this book. There's the Spectacles of Wisdom, which I'm assuming went to this kid, because I'm assuming that kid is the kid that's like more athletic and the warrior, and that kid's the scholar. And so like these spectacles, like you put them on and they look like really, really old, like really old spectacles. And basically on the lens, like you can see all kinds of really cool stuff. Like you can see the stats of all of the humans. You can see the stats of the books, because the books kind of absorb like the energy of the humans that are reading them. You can see like the layout and floor plans of buildings, like any information you could possibly want at all, you can see immediately. And so they're really, really cool. There's also a sword that looks like it's like the size of a pen, but if a true warrior picks it up, then it will go full size. Stuff like that. It did remind me a little bit of like Dungeons and Dragons, or like basically any gaming, like Besom and stuff, because each person has like a true character. Like the one boy is a true warrior, the other boy's a true scholar, there's a girl that's a true witch, and another girl that's a true healer, and they each have like specific abilities that have to do with whatever their true core is. And so I loved that. I thought that was really cool. I enjoyed the at one time, like she goes into a book, and I thought that was so cool. I really enjoyed this book. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the series. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm curious to see where it will go from where it was. I don't want to tell like too much about it, because I don't want to give away spoilers, because a lot of stuff is revealed as you go. But just know that there is danger, there's adventure, I don't think there's kind of love, but it's like a side character thing. So yeah, really fun book. The next book that I read was for History of Magic, and that was to get my A, and that was to read a fantasy. So for that I chose Half Upon a Time, which takes place in the fairy tale world. I was like, that's a fantasy. That sounds like fun. So this one does for sure have 2 books in the series. I don't know if it has more than that. But basically, this guy here is Jack, and this girl here is May, and she's from our world, and this guy here is Prince Philip. That Prince Philip. So basically, this guy, James Riley, is a huge Disney fan. And so he took a bunch of the Disney fairy tales, and he took Red Riding Hood, which as far as I don't think she's has her own Disney movie yet. I don't know why, because Red Riding Hood is awesome. But he combines a bunch of the different fairy tales that have like slightly overlapping like character type stuff and kind of meshes them together, and at the same time adds in a new element and twists everything around, and it's just awesome. And so this girl, May, falls out of a portal into this fairy tale world right in front of Jack and his grandfather, who's also named Jack. And his dad is the Jack that went up the beanstalk and stole the golden egg and stole the harp. And I forget who he said his grandfather was, but he is a specific fairy tale person. And Philip is Prince Philip from Sleeping Beauty, but he is also the son of the guy that's killed the seven giants with one sweep of his hand. Except if you know the actual fairy tale, he didn't actually kill 7 giants, he killed 7 flies, and there was just all kinds of miscommunication. People just thought he killed giants. But they don't actually mention that part of the story in here. They just mention that he killed the 7 giants with one sweep of his hand. And so when May falls into their world, her grandmother has been kidnapped. And they go on a quest to try and rescue her grandmother. And there's definitely like some things in it. Like, I'm going along and they're like mentioning like how long ago there was this huge war that happened. And this war had like Snow White, and she was fighting the Wicked Queen, and all these players were involved. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, this timeline doesn't make any sense. And like some other things didn't make any sense either. But everything makes sense when you get to the end of it. And it's just like, oh my gosh, plot twists of the yin yang. So awesome. I am definitely planning on reading the second book because I want to see where this goes. I don't think I'm going to be reading it like anytime like right immediately. But I'm definitely like curious to see where this goes, especially because there was a prophecy that was given at the end of the book, and I want to see how that turns out. And there's definitely like I have ideas, and I want to see how those play out too. So this book was really, really good. It definitely kept you on your toes. There is adventure from one way to the other. I love this cover, but I don't think the cover correctly portrays how heroic. I don't know what that word is, but you know what word I'm trying to say. Jack is like a hero. He's great. And I don't think this picture really shows how much of a hero he is. This is a scene in the book, but it kind of misrepresents what's going on, even though this is exactly what happened. But it happened for a very specific reason, and they kind of just make Jack look like he's an idiot, and he's not an idiot. Jack is awesome. So yeah. Oh, and there's some romance. Oh yeah. Because I love, like, clean, innocent, adorable fairy tale romances. Who doesn't? And then the very last book that I read to earn my librarian NEWTs was to get an E in History of Magic. And that was to read a book with a map. And this book definitely has a map. In fact, it has kind of a really cool map. Like, definitely not your typical map. It's a very like haphazard, very crazy looking map. And actually, now that I've read the book, I haven't like looked at this map. I actually need to pick it up because it looks like there's a lot of stuff in this map that was not in this book. But this is part of a series. It shows like the second book is right there. And so the first book is The Wizards of Once. The second book is Twice Magic. I don't know if it's part of a full series. This is by Cressida Cowell, who is the author of How to Train Your Dragon. And I think she does all the artwork too, I believe. But there's some really cool artwork in here. I don't know if you can really see, but there's some like crazy artwork in there. So yeah. And so basically the premise of this book is this boy here is a wizard. He is the son of the great enchanter who is the king of the wizards. And she is the daughter of the queen of the warriors. And that is his werecat. And the sword that he has is a witch killing sword, and there's a sprite. And he actually has a bunch of followers, like a bunch of wolves and werecats and sprites and one raven. Yeah, there's a couple sprites on here, but these sprites actually look slightly different from what they actually look like, according to her drawings. But yeah. So basically this book takes place on the British Isles before they became the British Isles. Her words. And so this would take place back when like the Vikings and the Druids, I guess. I didn't realize the Vikings went to England, but I'm assuming that's who the warriors are. And there used to be witches in the woods, but the witches were all killed by the warriors. And now the warriors are going after the wizards because the witches were all bad magic. And the warriors believe that all magic is bad magic, even though the wizards only practice good magic. And so they're trying to kill off the wizards. The boy wizard has not come into his magic yet, even though he's a year past when they're supposed to come into their magic. And so he decides that the best way for him to get magic is to hunt down a witch and take her blood and get magic that way. Except that witches are supposed to be extinct. And so in order to get the witches, he has to go into warrior territory. And while he is in warrior territory, he runs into the girl and her assistant bodyguard, which actually, now that I think about it, this scene never happened. The two of them were never on the cat together. Anyway, but he runs into her and her assistant bodyguard, who are in the forest chasing down her enchanted spoon, who has run away because the assistant bodyguard said mean things and said she was not supposed to have magic because the warriors are not supposed to have anything that is magic. And she has stolen that sword, which is a witch-killing sword, and they get chased by something horrible through the woods and end up in the same clearing as the wizard boy, who accidentally captures them. And then adventures ensue. Turns out things are not exactly as they seem to be. None of the adults in the story listen to anything that they tell them. And the boy, the wizard, is a complete brat. And he really, really annoyed me. Talking about annoying characters, and I can't stand annoying characters, he's a very annoying character. He is loyal to a fault, but he's so annoying, and he's just so frustrating. And most of the trouble is caused by him and his frustrating annoyingness. And so all kinds of crazy adventures ensue. Life lessons happen. It's pretty fast read, mostly because it's middle grade, but also because there's like huge pages like this where there's like very little writing and lots of pictures. So it is a very fast read. This is actually a sample of what the spell book looks like that he uses. There's like whole pages of the spell book in here. Lots and lots of artwork, which I did kind of find distracting because I'd be like reading it, but my eye would automatically want to go to the picture. And with some of them, like with this one, if you see the picture and then you read the writing, it doesn't quite make sense until you actually read that writing in the actual writing. And so I had to like train myself to read the page first before I looked at the picture so that I could know what I was looking at. It's definitely a fun book. It's fast. I would suggest people read it, but I don't plan on reading the rest of the books in the series. This one was enough for me. I don't think I could go through another book of him. He's so annoying. But I think it was a really fun book, and I think if you don't mind annoying kids, and if you enjoy the adventure of the book, I think you would really enjoy it, and I would definitely suggest people reading it. I definitely love the artwork on the cover. But like I said, it's a fun book. It definitely ended like with kind of a cliffhanger, like to go into the next book. Not everything gets solved in this book. There is more to it, and I am kind of bummed that I'm not going to find out the more to it, but at the same time, like, I'm good. I think I'm good. So, those were all 7 of the books. 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, 7 books. Those were all 7 of the books that I read so I could sit for my NEWTs. I did read all of them just barely in time. I finished that book with 8 minutes to spare on the 31st of August. 31st? 30th? Whatever the last day of August was, I finished with 8 minutes to spare. So I did finish those 7 books in the month. I am now moving on to the Percy Jackson series so I can read that before they have the... I'm tired, I'm blanking on his name. But before Rick Riordan comes to town with the Riordan Presents, and I also need to read The Storm Runner before Cervantes gets here, because she's going to be here too, and I want to read all of their books, and it's going to be awesome. Actually, now that I think about it, I wonder if I should read that before I read because I only plan on reading her one book, because I don't have the rest of the series. I have the whole Percy Jackson series. Anyway, I will figure that out later. But those were all the books that I read. Most of them, I would definitely suggest you guys go and check out. If you want to read Gulliver's Travels, it does have great political commentary. I think it still applies today, even as it applied back in the 1700s. I wish there was like an edited version so I wouldn't have to read all of the like crude parts, but still get all of the awesome political commentary, but I doubt there's a version that has the political commentary and no crude parts. Because I think the kids' versions probably wouldn't have the political commentary. But yeah, most of these books were like really awesome. Some of them I won't be continuing on with the series, but I still was glad that I read the book and I still enjoyed them. So I will see you guys next time. Bye!